We're just going to go ahead and dive right in here to our first hand of the day. Ace 10 offsuit from under the gun. I raised to 15 and get not one, not two, but three customers. But we get top pair on an ace king 9 flop. I've got top pair, a decent kicker, and there aren't too many two pair hands out there. So I'm going to go ahead and stick in a continuation bet for 30 bucks. I'm okay checking this one back once in a while, but I'm pretty new to the table, so I don't really have an image, and I'd rather be seen as somebody who's a little bit more aggressive than someone who's a little bit tight. That way, when I really have something good, I will get paid off. So I bump it up to 30, two people fold, and the cutoff raises to 120. I guess she could have the ace of hearts and another heart, so she's raising top pair with a flush draw. Maybe she's got something like jack 10 of hearts for a combo draw. I guess she could have a set of nines. This is kind of a weird line on this board that so heavily favors my range, but this early in the session, out of position, a lot of bad turns could come. I'm just going to go ahead and wait for a better time, and I'm going to fold this one. Never find out what she had. We live to see another day. Ace Jack offsuit from the big blind. It's Limp City USA, so when it gets to me, I'm going to bump it up. I make it 20, and unfortunately get 3 callers. Flop comes out ace queen 3 with 2 spades. I continue for 50, and the button raises to 150. Really? My kicker's better than anything she should be limping with on the button, so unless she has bottom set or somehow has something like ace 3, we should be good here. I think if I fold top pair again with another solid kicker, I'm just going to be super exploitable, and I'm going to look like the nittiest player at the table. So when she makes it 150, I stick in the call. Turn is the 5 of spades, which is just great. So now the semi-bluffs that she had happen to get there on the flush. So I'm not really sure what I'm beating here. I check, and she goes ahead and jams all in for 220. This sucks, man. I flop top pair with a solid kicker on back-to-back hands, and I have to fold both of them. I say, show a bluff, and she shows ace queen. Why is this lady limping with ace queen on the button? That's not a good sign. I'm not going to get much money out of this player. So the fact that she's limping ace queen, A, is going to make it hard to put her on a range since she's only going to raise kings and queens and aces. And B, it means it's just going to be really hard to get money out of her. And with somebody sitting just a few seats in front of me, this is a bad recipe for making money. I might consider a table change pretty soon. Anyway, she gets the best of me this time, limping with ace queen on the button and just flopping top 2 pair against my ace jack. Rough start for today, but let's turn things around. $10 button straddle is on, and I've got king queen suited from the hijack. One of the limpers is the lady from the previous hand, which I don't love, but I'm going to go ahead and bump it up to 50 when it gets to me. It folds back around, and both limpers make the call. So we are 3 ways to a flop of king jack deuce with 2 clubs. Please tell me my top pair is going to hold up for once, but before it gets to me, under the gun donk bets 55. Now, considering the table that I'm at, I've decided not to top off after those first 2 hands went the way that they did. So I'm playing this hand short stack, and I only have 178 left. This is the perfect time to go ahead and rip it in. If he's got a lesser king, that's great. If he's got clubs, that's great. I don't think he's going to have king jack here too often, although he might. But if that's the case, then I'm just going to go ahead and give him my chips. So I'm all in for 178, and what do you know? The lady sitting in the big blind who checked the flop says she calls. That's not great. Big blind who donk bet the flop thinks about it, and wisely folds. He would later tell me that he had another king. So I'm just hoping that we avoid another club, and we do, as the turn comes in the jack of spades and the river is the ace of spades. And of course, the lady has ace 10 of clubs. We were basically flipping, although once again, someone with ace 10 suited is just limping. This is not going to be a profitable table. I'm tilted. I've hit top pair 3 hands in a row and lost all 3 of them. These nitty limpers are just outflopping me, and it's time to switch tables. So I think it's time for a mid-session update. So shortly after those hands, I decided it's time for a table change. You can't play profitably when the majority of the table are nits. I mean, you can bully them, but then you're just going to bleed out when there's a high rake. They're just not going to pay you off. And if you're constantly stealing small pots, you're just giving half of your winnings to the casino on the rake. Also, I was using my girlfriend's phone to record that first part of the session, so if things look a little bit different, that's why. So we switched tables, and the first hand is, of course, unfilmed as we're just getting our bearings, and we raise 8-7 of diamonds from under the gun and get 2 callers. Perfect flop of jack of diamonds, 9 of diamonds, 2 of spades. So we flop the combo draw as well as the straight flush draw. Plan A is to represent an overpair and just take it down with a ton of pressure. Plan B is to hit the straight, the flush, or better yet, the straight flush. So anyway, I get a great flop and I continue for a pot size bet of about 45 bucks. One person calls, one person folds. Turn is no help, the 9 of clubs pairing the board. The good thing is it's less likely that he has a 9 and it's less likely that he has a set. So now my pressure has a really good chance unless he happens to have a 9. I bump things up, I make it 120 and he calls again. So plan B is not looking great, but let's make plan A work. River's no help. It's the 3 of hearts. It's time to just go ahead and fire because Jack High is not getting it done, and we're telling the story that we've got an overpair. I make it 200 to go, and he goes deep into the tank. I start by just looking down, staring at the board, and after about a minute, I don't want to make it look like I'm avoidant, so I just start looking at him. I try and remain calm, jovial even. He thinks about it for a long time, puts his hands over his cards, and slowly pushes them into the muck. We get away with it. I show the semi-bluff because I want to get paid off when I actually have something. Nothing adds to variance like those good old bomb pots. Thankfully, this time I'm on the button, and I've got Jack 9 offsuit. Flop comes out 10-8-5 with 2 spades, so I'm open-ended, and the small blind just jams for 100 bucks. The low jack makes the call with about 700 left behind her, so I'm really on the fence. Do I chase open-ended here? And if I happen to hit with a spade, am I good? I have to suspect that at least one of these 2 players has spades, so I'm going to assume I'm drawing to probably 6 outs. Kinda on the fence about a call or a fold, and I opt to play conservative. I don't want my money being dictated by just random luck and bomb pots, so I make the fold. And sure enough, the turn is the Queen of Hearts. No spade comes on the river, so we decided to just go ahead and fold the nuts. Small blind shows pocket jacks, and he got called by the low jack who had ace 10 offsuit. I've got pocket 8s on the button, and something worth noting is that the high hand of the day is quad 8s, worth a whopping $3,674. Sure, it's pretty unlikely, but I've seen it happen, and I definitely want to see a flop if I can help it. It folds around to me, and I can't stand it when people on the button just go ahead and limp, so I put in a rare min raise to $6, and I'll almost assuredly get action from one of the blinds. The small blind calls, and the big blind raises to 28. She's been tight but aggressive. I'm perfectly happy seeing a flop for 28 bucks in position, and the small blind folds. Flop comes in King 9-6 with 2 hearts. The big blind continues on the smaller side for 20 bucks. And I'm going to go ahead and raise to protect my equity in this hand. I think she's going to miss this board a lot. So I bump it up to 65 and she puts in the call. Turn comes in the 4 of spades. She checks again, and now I'm going to bet as if I had a king. I make it 115 to go, and she calls again. River's the 2 of clubs. She checks, and I give up. I say, your king is good, and she announces pocket jacks. So she gets a little bit sticky. Well played by her, and we chip down a little bit. Pocket 6s from the big blind. Middle position raises to 16. The low jack calls, and we call as well. And we go 3 ways to a flop of 10-9-6. We bink bottom set. Middle position continues for 35, and I know better than to just go ahead and slow play bottom set. I check raise to 115, and he decides it's time for him to just go ahead and get all in. He makes it 380. I'm guessing he probably has an overpair here, but I'm not going anywhere. I put in the call. Truth be told, after I put in the call, I looked away. So the run out comes, and I hear my opponent announce flush, which is not great. And then I look down and realize that I binked the boat on the river. He shows ace 9 of diamonds. He flops second pair along with a nut flush draw. Totally understand him playing this the way that he did. We got it in with about 70% equity, and thankfully it held up this time. Chipping up feels nice. It's getting late in the evening and we're playing either 4 or 5-handed, so playing a little bit more aggressively with hands that we might normally fold when we've got a full table. I've got 6-5 of diamonds from the hijack. I raise it to 15, the small blind calls, and the big blind 3 bets to 75. The big blind's a younger player, plays very GTO or game theory optimal. Plenty of bluffs are in his range, but he's not reckless or wild. While his game and his overall approach is a little bit more sound, it also makes it easier for me to pin him on a range. I also know that he's going to be 3-betting a lot of his hands here that aren't low pocket pairs. So if we get a low run out, I'm probably going to be inclined to raise him on an ugly flop. I make the call in position. Small blind contemplates jamming. Thankfully, he folds, and we get a beautiful flop of 5-3 deuce. My opponent knows the board isn't favorable for his range, so he checks. I'm going to assume I'm in the lead, but I'm just going to go ahead and check it back. Turn is also solid. It's the 2 of diamonds. Big blind bets 60, and I pretty quickly make the call, trying to make it clear that if he's going to try and buy this pot from me, he's going to have to go big. We improve our 2 pair to top 2 as the river comes in the 6 of hearts. Anything below 150, 175, I'm going to snap off, but he wisely checks, and I check it back. He shows king jack offsuit, and our top 2 pair is a winner. It's always fun showing off the good plays on the vlog, but we also have to show you the bad ones. And this hand is probably the worst hand that I've played in a really long time, as I make the wrong decision on probably every street other than pre-flop. So I'm sitting in middle position. I've got pocket 8s, which is a good thing because, again, quad 8s pays you something like $3,700. Under the gun raises to 25, which is an 8x raise. Really strange sizing from him. Typically, you'll see this from maybe older players who are a little bit more straightforward, or maybe you'll see it from people who are playing a little bit scared money. The other times that you'll see it are going to be players who have a hand that they feel like is very vulnerable to getting outdrawn, or they just don't know how to play it. Sometimes it's going to be ace-king offsuit. Sometimes it's going to be something like 9s, 10s, or jacks. So those are the 2 different things I see in this player's range when he opens 8x to 25. Considering that pocket 8s are what they are and that we just want to see a flop, I make the call. Thankfully, nobody else joins, so we're going heads up to a flop of jack 10-4. Under the gun bets 25, and I decide to raise to protect my equity. I make it 65 to go. This is awful sizing because it doesn't tell me anything at all, and he's going to call with basically anything. Maybe I get a hand like ace-5 suited to fold, or maybe a middling pair like 6s or 7s. But for the most part, almost all of his range is going to continue with such a small sizing. Unsurprisingly, under the gun puts in the call, and we're off to a turn, which is the 9 of clubs, leaving me no idea of where I stand with the bottom end of open-ended. Realizing that I'm probably behind unless he's got something like ace-king, when he checks, I check it back. At this point, I'm not really sure what my line says. I've called him pre-flop, I've raised him small on the flop, and then a connecting low card comes in, and I decide to check it back. River comes in the queen of diamonds, so now I bink the bottom end of the straight, but under the gun bets 200. This overbet is saying he's either super strong or completely whiffed. I don't know why he's going so big, and I just him and haw. I actually asked the table to just give me a minute because I'm trying to think through what is going on. We probably have a similar number of kings in our range, maybe a little bit more for him. He does have king queen, he does have king jack, he does have ace king, and I don't really have a lot of experience against this player, so I try and make the exploitative fold and show my 8. Thankfully, this opponent was nice enough to show me what he had. What do you think is most likely? turns over ace 10 of hearts. So we decided to raise when we were behind, and then we decided to fold when we were ahead. We took a line that made no sense. We improved to one of the best possible hands, and then we fold when he puts out just over a pot-sized bet. Worst hand I've played in a long time. I'm pretty embarrassed by it, but you know what? I gotta share the bad along with the good. All right, we're back out here, and you know that means it's another unfilmed hand. So we have pocket eights this time on the big blind, and as you know, pocket eights, if you get quads, are worth like $3,700. So we definitely want to see a flop. The cutoff limps. The button, who's been aggressive, makes it 25, and I, of course, call. Unfortunately, the cutoff comes along as well, so we're going three ways to a flop that comes jack high with two spades. Checks around to the initial raiser on the button. He sticks out a continuation bet of 30. I'm more worried about the cutoff having a jack than I am the button having a jack, but I go ahead and make the call and hope that it goes to heads up, but that doesn't happen as the cutoff sticks in the call. So now we're off to a turn, and I'm probably just going to go ahead and get out of the way unless I happen to bank an 8, and that's what I do. The 8 of spades from space comes in, so now we've got a set. I'm going to go ahead and check and hope that the initial raiser actually has an overpair, but it doesn't make it to that as the cutoff just jams his last $100. The cutoff's been pretty tight, so he's definitely got something here. He's not bluffing. More than likely he's got a flush, and I know it, but there's no way I'm ever folding. The button does fold, and I slowly start to slide my chips into the middle, and I just turn to the dealer. Please give me the 8 of hearts. Please give me the 8 of hearts. I'll give you a big tip. Alas, it comes in the 4 of clubs, and sure enough, my opponent shows 5-4 of spades for a turn flush over our set of 8s. Pot odds wise, I think it was a fine call. Definitely when you factor in the almost $4,000 I would be getting if I hit the 8. So I don't hate calling, even though my opponent always has a flush there. Such is life. Last filmed hand of the session, I've got pocket 10s in the small blind. The $6 button straddle is on, and I'm pretty confident that somebody's going to raise if I just go ahead and limp. So I put in 5 more. The big blind limps as well, and when it folds back around to the button, he makes it 26 to go. Time to spring my trap. I 3-bet to 100. The big blind folds, and the button is all in for 186. I don't have much of a decision to make here. I go ahead and flick in the call. The run out comes jack 5 deuce. Turn is the ace of spades, and the river is the 7 of diamonds. I announce ace is good, and he shows king 5 offsuit. This is the kind of player I want to be playing more against. We scoop a nice medium-sized pot and end our day. All right, vlog 22 is in the books. Before I get to numbers, I promise more of the dogs will be in future vlogs. I know the last couple have been super poker heavy, so for those of you who are big dog fans, my apologies, they'll be in there. The channel is finally over halfway to monetization. That's a good thing, and less than half of you are subscribed. So if you're one of those people who are not yet subscribed, you're watching and you either like this content and or you want to help out a shelter pup at no cost to you whatsoever, just hit that subscribe button. Quick note for those of you that like these videos but aren't on YouTube religiously, we are getting back to posting updates on Instagram, X, and Facebook. So if you're on any of those platforms more frequently, you can go ahead and follow us there. That way you'll be notified every time we drop a new episode. All right, we were in for $1,000, and after playing 9.5 hours of poker, we cashed out with a measly 491 bucks. That is a miserable 53.58 per hour in the negative. So another losing session for us here. Aside from the one awful, and I mean truly awful hand that I played with pocket 8s, the one where I rivered the bottom end of the straight and ended up just all over the place with how I was playing it. Aside from that atrocity of a hand, I thought I played okay. I was in some tough spots early on with top pair, 2 of which I made good folds, and the third one I got it in on essentially a flip. That brings us back to the title of the episode, Avoid Playing Against Nitty Players. It's going to be really hard for you to make any money off of them. It can be kind of boring when they're just folding all the time. And it's almost like your only chance to profitability is coolering them with flush over flush or maybe a set against a bottom set. You get the idea. Also, especially when you're playing smaller stakes, the rake is such that if you're just taking in all these small pots, basically everyone's losing. All right, the camera ran out of battery, so let me just reiterate the point I was making. So let's say you lose one hand where you net a loss of $50. Okay, that's fine. You tried to buy it, you did a continuation bet, and they called. Great, you lose your $50. But then you win 3 smaller pots because you just ran them over with your aggression. Well, your pots that added up to $50 are still getting raked. So you're probably only taking home maybe a net of $35 to $40. So you add in -50 plus 35 to 40, and you're at a net loss. In the long run, the nits are not going to get paid off because you're going to wise up to them. You're not going to pay them off. They're going to lose. And in the end, you're going to lose too because you're playing with people where you can barely beat the rake and the only winner is the casino. So long story short, avoid the nits. Don't encourage them. Don't play with them. Certainly don't pay them off. And that's the end of my rant on nits. That's going to do it for this episode of Poker for Pound Pups. I hope you run good, pet your pups, and at all costs, I hope you avoid those nits. We'll see you next time. Hey everybody, subscribe here to catch the latest episodes. Also, hit that like button and share these videos with anyone who might enjoy them. Doing that really helps the channel and its goal to support dog shelters, so thanks for watching Poker for Pound Pups, and have a great day.